I'm not going to judge someone who is triggered and responds maladaptively. Like, I do that every day, as we've discussed.
Right.
I think I'm talking to myself. Like, I need to be more responsible with my triggers. Before we do anything else, I want you to see my sweater.
Okay.
Look familiar? It's the podcast colors.
Okay. I was like, what am I supposed to be seeing?
And my hair clip is black and white, which are our other two colors.
And it looks amazing in your hair.
Thank you. All right, I'm tired of looking at my forehead zit. Oh man, I forgot to show you my heart sunglasses. You'll just have to imagine those.
Okay.
Hello, friends.
Dramatic pause.
Wait, I actually don't have a tagline.
Oh shit, I was gonna try and think of one and I forgot.
I mean, triggers are pretty easy, I feel like.
Yeah.
To make a joke out of.
Right. Okay.
All right, you ready?
Yes.
All right.
Hello, friends.
Hello, friends.
Hello, friends.
Hello, friends.
It's always awkward when I do it first. I'm like, wait, that's not how the flow goes. Anyway, hello, friends. Yeah. Welcome to Pickles and Vodka, the mental health podcast where we're not out to trigger you. Or do we?
You do that to yourself.
You do that shit to yourself. I'm one of your co-hosts, Lauren.
I'm your other co-host, Christina. I'm feeling pretty goofy today.
Oh, good. Me too. Well, here's my situation. So this morning they were doing all this, I don't know, like lawn work at my place. And I don't know if it was like the industrial lawn mowers or maybe like leaf blowers, but my whole apartment smelled like exhaust.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And then...
Is it safe?
I mean, if not, that's long past. That was hours ago.
Oh, fuck.
But now, like, what I'm thinking about more is they're doing work on the apartment across the hall from me now that the neighbors are gone.
Oh, the one that the cops raided?
Yes. Now it just smells heavily like paint fumes or sealant fumes or something like that.
Are you at least getting high?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I feel like my complex is trying to get me high today, and the half an edible I took probably didn't help.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you said that because, well, so you know the meme that's going around, we listen and we don't judge?
No.
What?
I'm not up on the memes. I usually see half of them like 7 months later.
It's basically two people facing each other stoically, and they say in unison, we listen and we don't judge. And then one of them says something like, I secretly eat your leftovers and say I threw it away because it was rotten.
Okay.
And then they both say, we listen and we don't judge. And then the other person goes, and it's something like that.
Okay.
But anyway, we listen and we don't judge. You ate an edible.
Yep.
We listen and we don't judge. I just got high on my fire escape.
Okay.
That was a very roundabout.
I knew where you were going.
But if you want, I can go first with where you're at because that actually ties into something I wanted to talk about.
Oh, okay, good.
But first, teaser for this episode, we are finally sharing your responses to the poll we released about triggers.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was episode 179 where we talked about how we feel about triggers, and then we asked you what you thought. And so today we'll be sharing your responses and discussing.
Yes. Do we have voicemails?
We do.
Yay!
We have more voicemails than comments, actually.
Oh, okay.
So one of our mutual friends made a post that was, we listen and we don't judge. How are you guys doing for real? And I commented, worse than I'm willing to admit. And that's kind of where I'm at. I feel like this week has shown me that I'm not as in control as I think I am.
Mm-hmm.
Shocker.
Yeah.
And it's kind of scary because, I mean, we've talked about this before, how like mental illness hits different in your 30s and 40s and beyond.
Yeah.
Your body and your brain are not as sturdy, fresh. What's the word I'm looking for? Resilient?
Yes.
No,
I thought that's good.
But yeah, it's like every time I relapse, my body, like I get weaker, and it's just really annoying.
Yeah.
And boring.
I agree. It's annoying.
Yeah, it's really annoying. I did talk to my mom about it today.
Mm-hmm.
So snaps for me. I didn't want to, but I was like, I need to tell someone in my family that's getting like worse.
Mm-hmm.
And she took it really well. And in the end, she was like, thank you so much for trusting me enough to tell me this.
Oh.
Yeah, we had a pretty nice day today. I went over to do laundry and then we went thrifting.
I just had like a reaction that I didn't expect when you said your mom responded like that. Because, I mean, that's part of why I don't really tell my family or my parents anything. I just thought, how nice that the first thing she didn't do is immediately try and fix it. I mean, I don't doubt that she had, like maybe some thoughts and things too, but...
Well, because she also has struggled with eating disorders, we've been having this like conversation for years and years at this point.
Yeah,
and so
that makes sense.
She used to respond in ways that weren't great, and I schooled her.
Yeah.
That's so sad, though, that like I am really lucky that I can talk to her about this because I know that that's so rare.
Mm-hmm.
Like in your case.
Yeah.
And I know I talk a lot about how shitty my childhood was and how traumatic and how being around my parents is triggering at times. But my mom is really great. She's a lot of fun to be around, and she never lets me buy my own clothes at the thrift store.
Oh.
That's actually where I got this sweater.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, I guess I'm feeling pretty good and goofy after
unloading to your mom and
after Ginger Lou and Mary Jane.
Yes. I love that.
That's the name of her podcast. As if.
Those are our alter egos.
I would love to smoke weed with my mom. That's never going to happen, though.
I've always been curious to smoke weed with my dad because I don't know for sure that he has, but I mean, I know like all his sisters do and he knows that they do. So, I mean, it seems logical.
Listeners, have you smoked with your parent? Let us know what that was like.
It was a recent episode where I told you I smoked with my elementary school best friend's parents. That one was fun.
Anyway, Lauren, where are you at?
So I hate when I like think about this in the morning and I'm like, I'm going to have so much to say. And now I'm like, I don't know what I was going to say.
That's how I feel whenever I go to therapy.
Me too. So I had my Christmas party last night for work and I invited the guy to come, and it would be like my first time at this job having a significant other come.
And how long have you been working there?
4 years. But I feel like it's always been really noticeable to me because like sometimes like one person's, husband or partner can't make it, but I have been the only single person, I think, the entire time I've worked there.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah. And I think that was one of the things I was thinking of, because that's what I knew I was thinking about this situation, but I couldn't remember my feelings tied to it that I came to. But I think that was one of the things I was thinking about is, like how nice it was. Not just that, but I realized like, I think I was probably low-key judging myself, like some of the other parties, seeing, like everyone. And it's like, there's a lot of people younger than me. There's a lot of people older than me. And you just start to feel like, what am I doing wrong in my life? Or why did the young ones, like get lucky and find their person? It's like you're, quote unquote, supposed to, and I can't do anything right.
How many of them are going to get divorced in the next decade,
Well, maybe, yeah, but...
Also, how many of those are actually healthy relationships? You know how many miserable couples, that have been together for decades?
Yeah, well, and also, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of younger people and a lot of older people, and of the older people, I was just thinking, I believe 3 of them are on their second spouse. They bring a spouse,
exactly.
But yes, they obviously had things not work out.
Love that for them. That they brought a second, that they got married again.
Well, one of them, I think, like her first may have died. So it happens. And you find someone new.
Now I'm the one keeping you from talking about your feelings.
Yeah, I don't remember what else right now other than that, so maybe, maybe it's a decent night for me too. Because it was just like, it's nice. And I probably judged myself, too hard those past times and everything, and just got down on myself. But it's just nice to not even have to fend that off. Just be like, yep, I had fun.
Yay!
What do you know?
So things are going well with the guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been together about a month now, I guess.
Already?
Yes. Because it was 2 weeks before Thanksgiving.
That's crazy.
Because we'd only been out twice when I go meet his family.
When I was on a walk with my mom, she asked about you.
Uh-huh.
And I said you were dating someone, and she, like, screamed.
so cute. Ginger Lou is happy for me.
She is. She's very happy for you. And she thinks the Ariel stuff is cool too.
Well, it is cool.
It is undeniably cool. So,
yes,
let us start sharing these responses. To recap, we talked about triggers, including like what triggers us, if we feel like it's our fault or if it's the environment. We talked about trigger warnings.
How we kind of feel about triggers in general. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the question we asked listeners. What are your triggers and how do you feel about triggers in general? So we're going to start with a voicemail from Heather.
Okay.
Hey, Lauren and Christina, it's Heather. So I was listening to the triggers episode, and I don't know, I have a personal take, very personal take. Personal to me, it's just that, like, I feel like I'm so jaded that trigger warnings are like chump change. Like, I realize I have severe mental illness, and I've been in therapy for 20 years. So, but like, I guess there is nothing that's TMI or nothing that's too dark or nothing that's too heavy, but that is definitely not everyone. So me personally, I kind of just read over trigger warnings because I'm like that. And I'm like, nah, I can handle it. So that's how I personally view triggers, but I'm glad they're there for people who need them. And crap, I thought I had more than that. I might send more later, but that was just the first thing that came to mind. I'm like, whenever I see triggers, I'm like, it's just whatever. I'm sure somebody else feels like that too. All right. I love the podcast this week, and the relationship one was good too. And Lauren, yay, your date went well. That's awesome. And I think that's it. Bye.
Heather, we love you.
I know.
It's been a while since we got a message from her.
Yeah, I was very excited when you said that name.
I really hope you're doing okay, Heather.
Mm-hmm. And also, I want to say that I think I feel the way she does about triggers most of the time.
Totally, yeah.
I especially loved the kind of like swagger where she's like, chump change.
I wrote down chump change too because it was such a distinctive descriptor.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly how I feel about it. I tend to skim over them if I read them at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, either that or I get excited when I see something has a trigger warning.
Oh, exactly. That is what else I wrote down is I was like, when I see a trigger warning, then I feel, like most of the time, yeah, probably don't care. The rest of the time, I'm probably there because I want to trigger myself. And I'm like, no shit, bitch, trigger me.
Well, trigger me. We need a shirt that says trigger me. Oh my God. I was actually thinking of shirt designs we could do.
Oh, yay. I would love that.
Oh my God. Guys, would you buy a shirt that said trigger me?
We should get a few ideas and then have people vote on them.
Yeah, or we could just do all of them. But yeah, it's either you're trying to trigger yourself, or for me, sometimes I get excited because I think, okay, this person is real.
Yeah, like we're going to see the real shit that's going on.
There's a better chance I'm going to relate to you if I see you have a trigger warning at the top of your piece or whatever.
That's a good point. Because a lot of times I'm sitting there like feeling embarrassed for like how I think or feel or what I'm doing. And yeah, when I see that, it's like, oh, good. Maybe someone else is about to relate.
It's funny because literally on Peach, right before we started, I wrote, does anyone even take trigger warnings seriously? Because I was kind of hoping for people to comment in time for the episode, but nobody did.
Oh. But true.
They didn't spend their Friday night answering my post, crowdsourcing the podcast.
Yes.
I'm shameless about that, though. Like, if I know you in real life, at some point, I'm probably going to get you to participate in the podcast. It'll go down easier if you do so voluntarily.
Yeah, I'm only going to do that if I let you know that I'm also messed up. If I'm pretending to.
Oh, yeah, but going back to trigger warnings, I do kind of feel like because of the severe mental illness, like I'm incapable of being shocked anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of produces mixed feelings. It's like, part of me is proud. I am so tough. Like, I can take it.
Yes.
And then the other part is like, well, have I been desensitized?
Yeah. That's kind of sad to think about. That it's like, yeah, it all just rolls off me. Don't care.
Well, like, we talked about Wasted by Maria Hornbacher a lot last time.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, because I grew up on books like that were really intense. Now when I read anything milder that critics say is like really raw, but then I read it and it's like not that raw by my standards. And then I'm like, man, should I be enjoying this more? Like, am I desensitized?
True. I didn't think of that because also, I mean, we got the internet when I was like 14, 15. So I definitely grew up prime time before people were trying to like police everything. And really, yeah, like it was all out there.
I mean, just reading about the eating disorder forums of like the early 2000s, I was never on them. And of course, now they're heavily moderated and, you know, there's trigger warnings and stuff. But like back then, from what I hear, it was wild. Like people would post anything.
Yeah, there was a time that is like the great cleansing. I was like, there's so many that got shut down at some point because.
Well, we met because of a subreddit that got shut down.
No, we didn't.
We didn't?
No.
Wait, you were never on our.
Right.
Okay. No, but I got to Peach because of it. And if I hadn't been on Peach, I wouldn't have met you. So, like, we did meet because of it.
Well, yeah.
In a way.
Because, I mean, I found my way there because of something similar, because a board that I posted on all the time it didn't get shut down like that, but it did shut down.
Yeah. For those interested in the lore, we're referring to our Pro ED, which was, in my opinion, it was very supportive. Like, I wouldn't go to that subreddit if I wanted to trigger myself, generally. Like, there's other subreddits for that.
Yeah, and I know, like, the board that I had been on before, they always build themselves as pro-reality. Like, they never wanted to be pro-ED.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Another t-shirt idea. But yeah, I mean, speaking of the internet of old, when I was on LiveJournal, or when I was lurking on LiveJournal, I found out about self-harm because people would post really graphic pictures of their self-harm. And I don't know what, my fucked up little brain was fascinated by that. And I thought it was so beautiful. And like, now I think about that and I'm like, oh my God, who let me on the internet?
Yeah, how is that all allowed to just be there?
Yeah, I mean, it's not nowadays.
Yeah.
I also had parental controls that I somehow bypassed. We both had really different internet experiences.
I was going to say, that was another thing, is no one had thought of all that stuff yet. So there were no parental controls when I was growing up.
Man, that must have been nice. Well...
Yeah, I mean,
the grass is always greener
in ways, but then also, like, I'm sure I saw tons of fucked up shit.
But yeah, thank you so much, Heather, for that voicemail. We relate a lot, obviously.
Yeah.
All right. The next voicemail is, I'll give you two guesses.
Orion.
No.
I feel like there should be another obvious one. Jess?
Yes.
Okay.
Triggered is such a commonplace word now that I feel like it's lost its weight. Like the heaviness of what a trigger actually is, which for me is why I don't enjoy that word. So I'm kind of in the same boat with you guys, but I can say that it is different for me for different things, and how I manage them, how I avoid them is different given whatever it is that's going on for me. Meaning that a few weeks ago, when my instructor turned off my camera and called me out in front of my entire class, telling me if I felt the need to eat, to turn my camera off. I've managed the symptoms of my eating disorder really well. But I still get iffy about situations like that. And that is, you know, quote unquote triggering for me. It kind of resurfaced some of those insecurities and, anxieties, some of those heavier thoughts I have around my body image and food. And it made it kind of difficult for me to come back into the class with a better attitude, even the week following. And it was difficult for a few days for me to get back on track with appropriate eating behaviors. And you know, in those instances, I wrote about it. I wrote on Substack. I went to my counselor and talked to my counselor about it. And I lean on my supports, is all of that is to say. I lean on my supports in those moments. There are other times that things resurface for me that are harder to manage. I was in an abusive relationship where I was sexually assaulted a lot in the relationship. And sometimes things that are said, certain movements can put me right back mentally, put me right back into that house, into that room, into the assault situation. those are things I'm still processing in counseling that I haven't completely learned to manage and control. So those are a bit harder for me. I still reach out to my counselor, make a sooner appointment if I need to. But I also try to walk myself through it and remind myself, like, I'm okay. I'm safe. I just kind of try to ground myself back into the present moment and remind myself that I'm okay. I lean on my supports. It can be really easy to have a toolbox full of things, but it can be really hard to find that goddamn toolbox when we're crumbling. And I think having my friends and supports be a consistent is one that I can always find. And that is helpful. At least for me, that's what I found.
Yeah.
Jess, thank you so much for being vulnerable with us. I mean, I feel like everyone who messages us gets vulnerable, but like, I really appreciate it because, yeah, that incident in class.
Oh my God.
That is absolutely not just triggering, but like a full-blown trigger, like a heavy trigger.
Yeah, like I was feeling the anxiety for her.
I was sweating.
Uh-huh.
Like, oh my God. Because, like, to this day, like, I hate it when people make any mention of what I'm eating.
Me too.
Because I already feel self-conscious and like a bad person just for nourishing myself. And they have no idea how hard it is. Like, the fact that I'm eating around you in the first place is miraculous. And so if you bring it up, like my roommate said something, like, when she first moved in, and I kind of snapped at her. I felt bad. I was like, please don't talk to me about my food choices.
Yeah.
I really hate that.
I mean, that is why I've only gone through self-checkouts for the past like 10 years, because I am afraid that someone at the checkout counter would make a comment on something I'm buying.
Yes, I actually get relieved when the cashier like has AirPods in
yeah.
and is not paying attention. Like, that happened yesterday. Whew, yeah. I mean, I guess we'll go down the list of like what she talked about in chronological order, because there's just so much. Well, first of all, she answers the question by saying trigger warnings have kind of lost their weight.
Yeah, and I got that too. I was trying to remember in the beginning. I remembered like journaling a long time ago and just kind of going off on the idea of triggers, and that's what. Yeah, I can't remember what I said exactly, but I was just like, that's so easy. Then anything can be triggered. I'm triggered. You're triggered. My goldfish is triggered. I can't remember what I said.
I mean, to some extent, that's true. Like, I think people are finally realizing, like, they're finally feeling safe enough to be like, oh, this doesn't make me feel good. I'm allowed to say something about it. But it is becoming very commonplace. And so I guess it cheapens it in a way.
Yeah, I feel like it's good, yeah, that people are recognizing it, especially as long as they are, doing something about it or trying to, like maybe seeing, should I stay away from certain situations because I realize this triggers me? But at the same time, it feels the same way to, in the last couple of years, how I feel the term gaslight has just lost its meaning, because there's people that don't understand it and they're using it pretty much to mean like, I don't like what you said. And I'm like, that's not gaslighting.
I mean, I only learned what gaslighting was like 2 years ago, and I do use it all the time now, admittedly, but I think I use it correctly. And it is nice to find a word for the thing that I've been doing to myself for years.
Yeah. And that's, I think, what's part of what's frustrating to me is I'm like, that's, it's a real problem if you find out that someone is gaslighting you. But I feel like because people are using it incorrectly, it's losing its meaning. When you use it, it should have a meaning.
I mean, it reminds me of when people say, like, everyone's queer now. It's like, no, people have always been queer. They just didn't feel like they could come out as queer, or they didn't have the language for it or whatever. Maybe they didn't even know because they weren't taught about it, like me.
And Pico.
Pico, are you being homophobic?
Oh, no. Pico equally has tried to make out with boys and girls.
Oh,
I'm pretty
Pico.
sure. I'm pretty sure that Pico is a big supporter.
But yeah, I feel like in the same way, when you say like everyone is triggered by everything, it's like, okay, yeah, maybe it is so commonplace that it's cheapened, but I wouldn't say it should keep you from taking other people's triggers seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, you're the only one responsible for your own triggers. And, like, that includes letting people know. And so I feel like if people take the step of letting you know, you should give them, like, handle it in good faith.
Yeah. And I think that is kind of like roundabout the point I was making by saying that, is that I feel like because some people, are maybe, like using it lightly, that's why when somebody says like, this triggers me, you might just brush it off and be like, oh, whatever. But, the person that said that could really mean it, and they're getting brushed off because of other people that are not.
Also, it's really obvious when someone is saying it as a joke. Like,
it should be. Well, yeah.
I mean, I'm guilty of making those jokes.
Same. I was gonna say I've done that,
but only to other mentally ill people.
Right. Same. And I do hope, that it's really obvious. I'm not trying to actually say so.
But yeah, back to like eating in class and being called out. How did she say she reacted to it? She like couldn't.
I don't know if I think she said she rejoined, but didn't, want to, and it was hard.
No,
and
I'm talking about like the days following. Like it took her a while to like recover from that incident. Yeah.
I mean, I would do like hearing that hit so many buttons with me, because I mean, there's the like being called aside like that already would stress me out. And I would be thinking about that for weeks afterwards. And then on top of that, like you said, I'm already super self-conscious if people are seeing me eating. And if that's what you're calling out, then there's just so many things.
I would be like, okay, I can't eat anymore. Like, this is embarrassing. I'm done. I mean, the fact that you leaned on your support system, Jess, and like, I'm trying to read my notes.
It's like one of our favorite new words. It's growth. But it really is.
No,
I mean,
for real.
Yeah.
Jess, you should be so proud of your growth.
Because definitely there are times when possibly today, if something like that happened to me, my response would just be like, oh, I fucked up. I'm just going to be quiet and not take part in the world and try and fix it, in probably a maladaptive way.
I feel like I do that every day.
Yeah.
Especially lately. It's just, it takes a lot of strength to...
Yeah, like realizing I actually have tools to deal with this.
Well, yeah, and I love her toolbox metaphor also.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even though you have the tools, when you're crumbling, it can be really hard to find the toolbox. And that's where your support system comes in.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very fortunate to have an amazing support system. Like, do I utilize them all the time? No. But I know not everyone has that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of, not that people listen to us for advice, but like if someone doesn't feel like they have a support system, what would be a healthy way to respond to a trigger like that? Honestly, make a post on Reddit about it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was like, there's ways to reach out like online or on, I don't know, apps.
On apps? Oh my God, that's so Gen X of you.
No, it's not. Oh wait, no, I was thinking of the wrong generation. I was thinking of like boomers. I was like, fuck that. They wouldn't know what that means.
I mean, at your age, you're going to start mixing stuff up. So,
yeah.
Oh, did you listen to my episode on the unfocused writer?
Not yet. It came up and I'm going to listen to it next.
Well, Chris and Christy, both Gen Xers, they have deemed me an honorary Gen Xer.
Okay.
I don't know why. I mean, you'll find out when you listen to the episode, but they're sending me a pamphlet in the mail.
I love it.
Yeah, I thought you would get a kick out of that. Also, I mean, she was talking about her sexual assault as well and the abusive relationship and how certain motions can bring her right back to like being in that room and, certain body language and like seemingly innocuous things.
Yeah.
And that's so real.
Yeah, that was also like my body experienced a really familiar feeling because, also some like past sexual assault, I know that there's times where it will just be someone says something or, something feels different and it puts me like right back in that situation. And that got me thinking about how, I feel like most of our conversation has been around triggers that, that people give you trigger warnings or they're triggers are going to happen. But sometimes you can't know.
The majority of the time.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why trigger warnings to me are kind of not pointless, but ineffective.
It's not like they're not helpful, but it's like, oh, cool. They're filtering out 15% of the triggers you could encounter.
If that. Yeah. I mean, there's responsibility and there's censorship. And like, I know there's a lot of gray area in between. And there's art.
And in between.
Yeah. It's a really complicated subject. But yeah, Jess, I'm really sorry that happened to you. And I really like the thing she says to herself, which is like, I'm okay, I'm safe. Mm-hmm. Just like grounding herself. Like that's another thing that does take practice, but you can do that on your own, like without a support system. You can't rely just on that in the end.
And like you said, I mean, it's not going to like magically work the first time you do it, but it is something you can at least try to do for yourself.
I wanted to plug her Substack.
Oh, cool.
I hope that's okay, Jess. If y'all want to read the piece that Jess referenced in the voicemail, you can go to jessriddle.substack.com. I'll message her before this comes out and see if it's okay to share that. But yeah, I love plugging my friends.
Yeah.
That sounded really dirty.
I love plugging my friends too.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
It's going off the rails. Okay, there's one more comment. And I want you to read it. Okay. I'm going to put it in the chat.
Is it the one on our Instagram?
Yes.
I have it pulled up.
Look at you. You are so professional.
So professional. I learned it from you. Okay. All the regulars are coming out this week. This one is from Vicky. And she said, I too have an immediate gut reaction to the word trigger and the entire concept. I get it. When attempting to get better, in quotes, and stop unhealthy behaviors, there are things we see or read or hear that can make our endeavor more difficult. But it's just a part of life. Life doesn't come with a trigger warning. I think I got jaded on this during my years moderating online ED recovery communities. We had so many rules. No numbers, no body pics, no descriptions of what was or wasn't eaten, no glorifying the ED, and anything that could potentially be triggering had to be behind a descriptive cut tag so readers could choose to click the link or not. I understand the reasoning behind this, trying to create a safe space for vulnerable users, but policing those rules was a full-time job and pretty much anything could potentially trigger someone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my God, that fits in perfectly with what we were just saying.
Mm-hmm. I know, like all the comments, I'm just like, oh, yes, I agree with you so much.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like most people do have that gut reaction to the word trigger, which is kind of like scoffing at it.
Mm-hmm. But I thought that hers was an interesting take too, because she mentioned like moderating one of the eating disorder communities. And It's just like, oh yeah, I mean, being put in the position of not only having to, like take care of your own triggers, but having to think like, what could trigger someone else? I mean, that has to be like, where do you start?
Yeah, I mean, number one, she's right. Like the triggers would never end. And also, I was just thinking as you were reviewing all that content, like if you're someone who is actively eating disordered, or even if you're in recovery, like that's gotta be.
That's what I was thinking too. Healthy. Like if you have any sort of history, then it's just kind of like, okay, so I have to see everything that's triggering just so I can filter out the worst of them.
Oh my God, that would be like the ultimate trigger me method.
Yeah, that would be if you, I don't know, are going to try and get over them by desensitization.
What just came out of your mouth?
Desensitization came out of my mouth, but with a couple extra syllables.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Vicky, you really need to come back and you need to talk about disability and you need to talk about being a moderator on an ED forum.
Yes.
I am so curious about that. And I know that Vicky started out on the forums around the same time as you did, right?
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it in a long time, I guess, in this context, till I read that comment. Because I was like, I knew that she did that for a while. And I mean, I was posting on that forum.
Oh my God.
So...
Did you ever talk about it with her?
I'm sure we have some, but yeah, I never asked her, like, I don't think what it was like having to force yourself to see everything triggering. That's interesting to me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure both of you have been like fully unhinged online.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, back in the glory days.
And of course, both of us because this was live journal. So we both had our own private journals where I don't think either of us really did much as far as like triggering or trigger cuts. It's kind of like if somebody was following our journal, we let them know up front, like, hey, shit might trigger you. I'm going to be real.
Yeah. I actually have a story from treatment that this kind of reminded me of. So it was my very first day in residential treatment for bulimia in 2021. And I was trying to be social and make conversation. And I forget what food I was talking about, but I mentioned a specific food as part of my lighthearted conversation. It was small talk, really.
Yeah.
And this person looked me dead in the eye and was like, we don't talk about that here. Or like, what did she say exactly?
Oh, I know. They always have like a phrase, I feel like, that, I don't know, just gets like said and then everyone parrots it.
I mean, the staff used to say, let's redirect.
Yep. Hey, I had that one.
Let's redirect this conversation. Or like, if someone was saying something really awkward and then there was a long silence afterward, I would be like, redirecting.
That's funny because if there's a long silence and it was awkward, I would say, who farted?
Sorry. You made me knock over my vape. You made me. Speaking of gaslighting, let me just gaslight my co-host on air. Do you have any stories like that where you like inadvertently triggered someone?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I do, but I can only think of like the ones I've probably told a few times because like you mentioned treatment, and I know I've talked about the time where I was.
You weren't allowed to say Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh well, there's that. I mean that one, yeah, it's been done.
That's to the death. One I always think of.
But the other one I feel like I've mentioned maybe not as much, so I was going to mention this time is where I was talking about Pico, and and I mentioned something about him being a 6.5 pound dog because he is. And later in a group, then someone brought up because they were like bringing up the topic of just like people are not really respecting triggers and staff is not redirecting when they should. Like there was talk about pets' weights.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad. Oh my God. That's so funny.
Yeah, I think I was just sitting in that group like, what?
It's funny because when I went to treatment, I guess my mom was proud of me. So she like reposted a picture of her holding me as a newborn. And she was like, my girl has always been a fighter. And then she wrote about how I was like 3.8 pounds or something. No, 3 pounds, 2 ounces. Because you were
premature, right?
I was premature. I was 3 months premature. And so I was 3 pounds, 2 ounces. And I commented on the picture from treatment, goal weight. And then one of my friends from Peach liked it. And then I commented too soon.
That's funny because as you were saying that, you reminded me, like someone at work because, well, maybe we can talk about this next. Work people can be triggering.
Oh my God.
But this was just funny. It was kind of inadvertently triggering at first because people, sometimes comment on my size at work. And that's what someone was just saying, like, oh my gosh, like, have you always been that small? And I was like, no, I started out 8 pounds, 3 ounces.
I mean, people who are asking you that deserve an answer like that, is what I think. Like, oh my God, people at work have always mentioned either my eating habits or my size.
Yep, I've gotten a lot of that too.
I mean, for the majority of my eating disorder, I've never even been really underweight. I mean, maybe we'll have to put a trigger warning for weight on this episode. But yeah, I remember when I got my first like office job in 2019, I was very, very sick. And, in retrospect, I look ghastly, but back then I thought I just looked normal. And I had a male coworker in his 40s who would like always make comments about my weight. And like one time I remember he literally reached out and grabbed my arm. He was like, I could snap you like a twig.
Yes. I knew we talked about this before because I was going to bring up the one that I had probably said in response, which was the time when I was standing next to the copy machine at work and a older female coworker comes up to me and she's like, you just disappear when you turn around to the side, just like this. And she reached out and squeezed my side.
Oh.
Yeah. And I think that more than anything was like,
like, never touch someone else's body without their permission. Please.
No. I mean, don't comment on it either, really, but definitely do not, no touching.
And like, we're thin. Like, we have thin privilege. Like, imagine it's so much worse for people in larger bodies. Like, my friend Rachel, I interviewed her back in 2021. I actually met her in that treatment center. Yeah, she talks about like her identity as a queer fat woman on that episode. The episode is called Treatment Made Me Gay.
Oh, I remember seeing that title. I'm not sure if I listened to it. I hope I did.
Yeah.
Or I will.
She's doing so good these days. She has a girlfriend. But anyway, she talked a lot on that episode about being treated like shit in treatment by the other patients and by the staff.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's disgusting. But yeah, people are terrible.
Yeah, that's like, I don't know if I've talked about this one because I've only quit 2 jobs in my life. And, I've talked about quitting the casino. But one of my first jobs, it was an A&W.
What? I loved A&Ws when I was a kid.
Well, so did I, except for this one. I was, like 18, 19 years old. It was like I was working in the kitchen. It was a fast food job for me. And a week or so after I got hired, then they hired another girl, probably around my age, but she was quite overweight. And the owners, I mean, they probably today would wish that they were like one of the Real Housewives or something like that. That's...
I'm not familiar with that reference.
I've never seen it, but I mean, that's like what I can think of because they're just,
what do you mean?
Like bitchy older women, like heavily made up and processed in plastic. Yeah. And so anyway, yeah, so they treated her so terribly. They literally treated her like she had a mental deficiency. Like she was stupid.
Yeah.
And I regret to this day, like I quit because I wasn't going to put up with people like that. But I was just like, what I wish I had done is like just taken her aside and been like, I'm going to quit. You don't have to put up with this either.
Yeah. Or like,
but you never know if people will even, receive that. But yeah, that was how I felt.
That's awful.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm thinking of like working in the service industry and like customers would be so mean sometimes about that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like the way that the customers treat you, I think sometimes
it's based on how you look.
Yeah, it's based on how you look. Exactly.
Yeah, you definitely you're going to succeed much better in the service industry if you're typically pretty. For sure. And young.
Pretty, young, thin, friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh, yeah. When I worked at Starbucks, like I was the shift supervisor, so I would be walking all around the store, like keeping tabs on everything. And so I would see how customers reacted when my baristas would like ring them up.
Yeah.
And they definitely were more rude. Like, for instance, sometimes there would be like a barista of color and they would like be ruder to them.
Oh, yeah. Did I tell that casino story?
No.
A few episodes back, I mentioned that I was looking through like my old live journals and I was reading some from when I worked at the casino and there were stories from there that I had forgotten even. Like one of them, there was a waitress on the floor and luckily she had a very good sense of humor about something she shouldn't. Because, she came back and she told us the story. She's like, oh, I just delivered the drinks to these 2 guys. And the one guy pays. His friend looks over and is like, hey, did you tip her? And he said, no, she's black. Yeah.
What the fuck? What year was this?
2003.
Not that people aren't less racist now.
When I read that, I remember I was just like, oh my fucking God.
I did quit a job because the owner was homophobic, fatphobic, racist.
Mm-hmm.
I actually walked out with another employee.
As you should. I mean, I'm sorry, but I couldn't be in that environment.
No, I mean, it was a local piercing studio and they're still in business, but like the whole crew ended up leaving and starting their own business and they're lovely.
Nice.
And I get all my piercings from them now.
Love it.
I say that like I have a ton of piercings. All my future piercings are going to be from them.
Okay.
What were we just talking about?
Tangents.
I mean, one thing with Vicky's comment that I think we should end on is like, hold on, let me read it again. Oh, yeah. When she says that triggers are just part of life, I think that is ultimately the message that we've arrived at.
Yeah.
Like, to tie it all up in a neat little positive bow, triggers are part of life. And if you're trying to avoid all triggers, like, you can't.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that goes back to Jess's comment as well, where we said it was like most triggers you have no control over. They're just going to happen.
Yeah. You have to be responsible for your triggers for yourself. Like, God, I think it's important. I think it's important to be responsible for yourself, like as a goal. Like with Jess, we acknowledged it took a lot of growth for her to get to that point. Like, I'm not going to judge someone who is triggered and responds maladaptively. Like, I do that every day, as we've discussed.
Right.
I think I'm talking to myself. Like, I need to be more responsible with my triggers because I do put myself in triggering situations on purpose. And like, I honestly feel like I'm too old for that shit.
Yeah. I mean, that's a future conversation I think we need to have, because we both brought that up recently of just feeling like this is tired and old.
Oh, aging with an eating disorder or aging with mental illness.
Yes.
Saying that like we're the Golden Girls or something.
I know, as soon as you said that I saw like age progression software, like you turn into a wrinkled old lady.
They do have filters for that.
Yes.
I think I have a screenshot of you with that filter.
Nice.
I don't know how I ended up with it. The Pickles and Vodka Instagram is way overdue for a photo dump.
That's true.
Like, I'm always messaging Lauren the day before the episode comes out. Hey, when you get a chance, can you find this picture from that thing you talked about? I really want to post it to the Instagram on time. And then I just never do. I have that video of me meeting Orion I have to post still.
Oh, yeah.
I have the picture of you with a pixie cut, a platinum blonde pixie cut.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, whatever you just mentioned, I already forgot.
Okay. So did I.
But yeah, we love to hear what you guys think. And just because we're wrapping up this poll doesn't mean you can't still send us messages about whatever you want, including triggers.
Yep. Or suggesting anything you want to hear us talk about.
Yes. So hit us up anytime. We don't bite. If you really want to go one step further and you want to talk to us.
Sorry, I was distracted because I had the inappropriate reaction when you were like, we don't bite. I was like, of course not. We have eating disorders.
Oh my God. Not true for me, unfortunately. No. God, what a mess. But yeah, if you want to be a guest, hit us up. And next week, we will have a topic of my choosing.
Yes.
And there is one poll currently out. You have 1 week to answer. The question is, do you consider yourself a people pleaser? And how has people pleasing affected your life?
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
We're done.
Yes.
Goodbye.
Bye.
If you like what you heard, tell a friend about the podcast. You can direct them to picklesandvodka.substack.com, where you can find our entire back catalog and links to all our social media. We love hearing from our listeners, so send us a voice message at speakpipe.com/picklesandvodka or DM us at Pickles and Vodka Podcast on Instagram. My personal account is at XtinaJumper and Lauren is at Lauren_AFH. We'll see you next week.